every domestic worker is indeed an employee. They deserve to enjoy all the rights and privileges of a domestic worker or of an employee. Unfortunately, there's a law in this country called Labor Domestic Workers Regulations 2020. This law provides for the rights, duties, and all issues concerning the domestic worker. I mean, the guy or lady working with you in your domestic setting. In this video, I present to you key concerns that you need to know about from this law as far as domestic workers are concerned. I am Godwin Selassie Dakpo, and this is Make It Legal.
Make it legal.
So we've put together 6 important issues that we think you should know about when you try to understand what this law is all about. Of course, some of these things are the rights that domestic workers have. But it's important for us to first understand the term domestic work. If I have a house help with me and he assists me with the house chores and help me do the laundry and all of that, cleans the room, take care of my kids, is that person qualified to be a domestic worker under the laws of Ghana? Of course, I think that person should qualify to be called a domestic worker. But let's find out what exactly the law says is a definition of the word domestic worker. What does the law say? The law says that a domestic worker, or a domestic work, I should say, is any domestic chores performed by any person in a domestic setting, or anyone who performs security services in their home, or anyone who performs activities of gardening in the home, and lastly, anyone who provides some assistance to you when you are undertaking a petty commercial activity. So anyone undertaking any of these activities qualifies to be called a domestic worker, and all these activities are properly defined within the context of the law to be domestic work. So now that you know what domestic work is and who a domestic worker is, first question to is the security guy at home guarding you all the time. I think he deserves to be called a domestic worker, isn't it? That should be the case. Second question is that the person who prepares your meal at home and takes care of the laundry and bath for the kids and ensure that all the house chores are neatly performed, and she's doing that and earning some income, you may call that person a house help. Is he or she a domestic worker? I think with the definition I just gave, she qualifies to be a domestic worker, isn't it? What right do these people have under the law? I take you through 6 of these rights, and please pay close attention because you are going to learn something that will be enlightening, well informing, and educative for you to guide your life so that you comply with the law and have peace under the law. The first right we will learn today about the domestic workers or domestic work is the right of a domestic worker to be given a contract of employment. Every domestic worker is an employee. As an employee, they deserve to be given a contract of employment. That contract must be signed by the employer. Of course, the madam or the man who they provide the services to must sign the contract, and they also must sign, and both parties must have witnesses signed for them that they are indeed witnesses to them entering into a contract of employment for domestic work purposes. Then that contract must also go ahead to provide for the period of hours that the domestic worker will be working and the leave periods that he'll be entitled to enjoy. How much would his or her salary be? What will be the benefits that he or she will get from working with you as a domestic worker? All of those information must be provided in the contract of employment, and it must be given to the employee. Additionally, that same contract of employment must contain information on referees and guarantors of the domestic worker. The law also requires that the contract of employment of the domestic worker is deposited with the district labor office. So you don't just give a copy to the domestic worker and that ends it. You should also take a step to deposit a copy of that same contract that both of you have signed with a district labor office in the region or the district where you are. The second important right every domestic worker has is a right to be paid a minimum remuneration that is not less than the national daily minimum wage at the time of employment. So if at the time of employment of the domestic worker, the minimum wage nationally is say 10,000 Ghana cedis, you cannot pay that domestic worker less than the 10,000 Ghana cedis. As at the time of this video, we are indeed in 2024, and as at January 2024, the national daily minimum wage for every worker is 18 cedis 15 pesos. In other words, when you are working in Ghana as an employee, you should not be paid less than 18 cedis 15 pesos per day. What it means is that when you are employing a domestic worker, you are not expected to pay less than 18 cedis 15 pesos per day to that domestic worker. What it means also is that if the domestic worker is working, say, for 20 days in a month, which is, say, Monday to Friday, which gives us 5 days in a week and 20 days in a month, you should multiply that 20 days with the 18 cedis 15 pesos to get a minimum amount of money that you can pay the domestic worker at the end of the month. The law is saying that you cannot pay below whatever minimum value you will get as remuneration for the worker. So if you have a house help working with you and assisting you as a security man or a gate man, as we call them, you are not expected to pay less than 363 Ghana cedis to them as a salary at the end of every month, because that would be contrary to the law that says that they are expected to be paid not less than the national daily minimum wage. The third one is the requirement to ensure that statutory deductions are made to their income. When we talk about statutory deductions, we're referring to those deductions that are permitted by the law. The law could be a statute or an act of parliament that says that when the man earns and a person earns income from employment, take so and so amount of money and pay to, say, his or her social security contribution or pay as income tax on the person's earning. So domestic workers are also expected to pay tax when they earn income from employment as a domestic worker. They are also expected to pay their social security contribution expected of every worker. So that implies that they have to be registered as an informal employee of a sort and ensure that they pay it at the end of every month. So they are not just there in the house to ensure that your meal is cooked and your items or dirty things are washed or your gate is well kept or they provide security to you and your family. That is all. No. And you get to maltreat them and just let them close anytime, get them to overwork and do all the dirty work in the house. That is not the sole reason they are there. They are there to work. They are employees and are expected to be accorded every right of the employee under the law. And three of them is what I've mentioned so far. Let's take the fourth one. The fourth one is that every domestic worker must be given a good living conditions when they are living domestic workers. What I mean by living domestic workers is that if the domestic worker stays with you in the house, have a place to stay, either because he's a security guy, he has to spend the whole night there, the law says that give them a good living condition or a good standard of living at the place. Don't just keep them in the storeroom with your food stuff and your shoes and other items and say they should just manage it. No. The law says that give them a good place to stay. That implies that giving them a place that assures their safety and their privacy. If the person is a female and stays in the house with you as a domestic worker, the law expects you to ensure that she has a good living condition. She stays at a place that her privacy and safety is assured. And again, the law also expects you to ensure that whatever place you have given them to stay, they have access to toilets and to bath facilities. I mean, they should have reasonable facilities that will make their stay in the house while working with you a good one. They are not to be abused or maltreated or be given the not too good facilities just because they are domestic workers. And of course, last but not the least is that as part of good living condition, they should be guaranteed some meal that is good enough for their growth and well-being. They will not cook the delicious meals for you and then you take all of it to the dining table and sit with your family and enjoy it and then expect them to take their remains when you are done eating. That wouldn't be fair. If meal is provided as part of their conditions of work, then it should be a good meal that is reasonable enough. The fifth right that every domestic worker has under the laws of Ghana, or the law we are talking about today, is the Labor Domestic Worker Regulations 2020. The fifth one is that the law guarantees rest and leave periods for all domestic workers. I mean, that is something that is not very common among the labor force in Ghana, especially the domestic workers. They are not always guaranteed rest periods, but the law says that every domestic worker must be given a minimum of 8 hours rest in a day. They should not work the whole of the 24 hours. If nothing at all, 8 hours should be given to them to rest or to be without any work. That means they should be sleeping at least for minimum of 8 hours. You can increase it, give them 12 hours to rest and work from say 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. and close. No matter how the arrangement for work is, the law says that they deserve minimum of 8 hours of rest in a day. The law also says that within the week, you should spare them at least 24 hours to rest. It means there should be at least a day in the week that they will not come to work at all. If they are your cooks, they will not come to the house and cook for you at all. If they are security guards, they will not come to work and do the security services. They are expected to rest at least 24 hours in a week. And more importantly also, they are entitled to annual leaves. Just like any other employee, they deserve to be given at least 21 days to be without working, and they will be paid. So for 21 days in the whole year, they can take that 21 days either continuously or in particular periods of the month and rest as leave period. But while they are on leave, you still pay them. They are entitled to that. They cannot be deprived of that just because they are domestic worker. The law says that give them leave period. Let them be on leave. When it's a public holiday, they should enjoy. When they are pregnant as women, they should be entitled to maternity leave. And when they are sick, they are entitled to sick leave. So these things are available to all employees. And the law is saying that don't deprive domestic workers these privileges and rights just because they are just domestic workers. So take note of that and ensure that their annual leave, sick leave, maternity leave, and public holidays are given to them to enjoy and have some rest. I know you are enjoying this video, so go ahead, click on the like button to like the video, and also go to the comment section and share your thoughts on what we've been discussing so far. What do you have to say about these things that you are learning now? Have you heard them before? Is it something you know already? Is it surprising to you to know that domestic workers have these interesting rights under the laws of Ghana? Go ahead and share your thoughts in the comment section. Go ahead also and click the subscription button, subscribe to the channel, and ensure that you share this video to as many people as possible. Now let's take the last point. The last point is the right the domestic workers have while they are at work. As a domestic worker who is at work, they have a number of rights in addition to all I have explained so far. The first one is the freedom to join associations. If they ever want to join an association of their choice, they can do so. You cannot prevent them to join an association just because they are domestic workers. You cannot do that. Number two, you cannot subject them to forced labor. The fact that they are domestic workers does not mean that they should be abused physically. They should be abused emotionally or psychologically by being burdened with unnecessary tasks or activities or works that will be construed as forced labor. If it is such an unreasonable labor or unreasonable activity, you cannot subject them to it. The law will say that you are subjecting them to forced labor, and that is prohibited under the laws of Ghana. You cannot do that. Again, they also have the privilege while at work to be given the opportunity to have formal and informal training where their skills will be developed and they will acquire new skill sets and improve themselves. The training could be formal ones or informal ones while at work. So the way you provide professional development training for your workers, the same way you should provide some continuous professional development training for people who work with you as domestic workers. They are expected to learn new skills, maybe how to prepare certain meals or how to do certain things better or how to use certain gadgets in the house. They're supposed to be learning and improving or growing in their skill as domestic workers as well. Last but not the least, under their right while at work, is the prohibition against sexual harassment. You cannot domestically violate or harass sexually any domestic worker just because they live under your roof and they are female or male and they are always with you. You abuse them emotionally or sexually. You cannot do that. The law protects them against sexual harassment from their bosses, either female or male, or from the siblings of the boss who employ them, or from other persons who are relatives of the boss who employ them. They are protected against such domestic violence and such sexual harassment. Sexual harassment is broadly defined in many ways, and it could be as little as flirting with her as a domestic worker while you are married or while you are home and she's there at work. The same way you don't go to work and harass your employees at work, you do not also harass your employee in the house who is a domestic worker. You do not harass them sexually. You don't beat them anyhow. You don't insult them anyhow. You don't just say things that would affect their emotional and mental well-being just because they are domestic workers. You cannot do that. The law prohibits such things against them. These are the 6 things that I think you should know as far as domestic workers are concerned. And I just want you to know that they are domestic workers and they are just like any other employees. And please ensure that when you have one, you treat them as an employee and accord them all the rights. And when you are one, just know that you have rights, accept this right and enjoy them. Okay, so now that we are at the end of the video, I believe you enjoyed it. And please, once again, don't forget to like the video and don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you are new here. And those who have subscribed already, we are excited to know that you are subscribing to our channel and you are supporting us, especially those also in the comment section expressing their thoughts, sharing their opinions and their views. We are excited to know. Go ahead and do that also for this video. Share it across to everyone, and we love you. Stay safe. See you in the next video. I am Godwin Selassie Dakbo, and this is Make It Legal.
Make it legal.